At my sister's wedding, my parents demanded I hand over the keys to my penthouse in front of 200 guests so my sister could start married life in style. I refused. My mom slapped me, I walked out, and one phone call changed the entire reception. Hello everyone, my name is Victoria Hayes. I'm 36 years old, and my sister's wedding ended the day my mother slapped me across the face in front of nearly 200 guests. Not because I insulted anyone, not because I ruined the ceremony, not because I caused a scene, but because I said one simple word: no. The slap knocked one of my pearl earrings onto the marble floor. I quietly bent down, picked it up, placed it back into my purse. Then I walked out of the ballroom without saying another word. Exactly 1 hour later, a man carrying a leather briefcase walked into the reception. The moment my mother saw who he was, she screamed. Looking back, none of it should have surprised me. I had spent my entire life being told that everything I had belonged to my younger sister. Her name was Sophia. She was 4 years younger than me. Bright, funny, charming, the kind of person who could convince almost anyone to help her. Growing up, if Sophia wanted something, Mom usually looked at me. You're the older sister. You should understand. When Sophia wanted my bicycle, I was told to share. When she wanted my bedroom because it had the larger window, I was asked to switch rooms. When she borrowed my clothes, they somehow became hers. Every sacrifice was described as love. Every refusal became selfishness. Eventually, I stopped arguing, not because I agreed, because nothing ever changed. After college, I earned a degree in commercial architecture. The first few years weren't glamorous. I worked 12-hour days, accepted every difficult project, spent weekends reviewing blueprints while my friends traveled. Little by little, my career grew. By 34, I had become a partner in my firm. The biggest reward wasn't the promotion. It was buying my dream home, a downtown penthouse overlooking the river. Every payment came from my own savings. No family money, no inheritance, no gifts, just years of hard work. The day I received the keys, I stood inside the empty living room, cried quietly, then called my late grandfather's voicemail. The number had long been disconnected, but hearing his old greeting one last time somehow made me feel like he'd been there with me. Grandpa had always believed in me. He used to say, "Never apologize for building the life you earned." I repeated those words often, especially around my family, because they never seemed to understand them. Sophia became engaged to Ryan a year later. He was kind, respectful, the complete opposite of the drama surrounding our family. I genuinely liked him. When they announced their wedding, I immediately offered to help. I paid for their honeymoon flights as my wedding gift. Ryan thanked me repeatedly. Sophia hugged me. For a little while, everything felt normal. Then, about 3 weeks before the wedding, Mom invited me to lunch. She seemed unusually cheerful. "We've been talking." "About what?" "Sophia's future." I smiled. "I'm excited for her." Mom nodded. "She deserves a beautiful start." "I agree." Then she reached across the table. "You still have your penthouse keys with you." I frowned. "Of course." She smiled. "Good. On the wedding day, we thought it would be a wonderful surprise if you handed them to Sophia." I laughed. Honestly, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "I beg your pardon. You've done so well. Sophia and Ryan are just starting out. It would mean so much." I stared at her. "You want me to give away my home?" "It's only property." "It's my home. You can buy another one." I slowly stood. "This conversation is over." Mom sighed dramatically. "I knew you'd be selfish." I walked away, certain she'd eventually realize how unreasonable the idea was. I was wrong. Wedding day arrived. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Sophia looked radiant. Ryan couldn't stop smiling. I pushed the lunch conversation out of my mind. Surely, Mom wouldn't bring it up again. During the reception, the MC invited family members to say a few words. Dad took the microphone. He smiled proudly. "Our oldest daughter has always been successful." Guests applauded politely. Then he looked directly at me. "Victoria, it's time." My stomach tightened. Mom stood beside him, holding a small velvet box. Inside were my spare penthouse keys. I immediately recognized them. The spare set I'd once left at my parents' house for emergencies. Mom smiled brightly. "Come up here." Several guests began clapping, confused, believing this was part of the celebration. I slowly walked toward the stage. Mom held out the keys. "Give them to your sister." The ballroom became completely silent. I looked at Sophia. She looked shocked. Ryan looked equally confused. "I didn't ask for this," he whispered. Mom ignored him. "Everyone's waiting." I calmly answered, "No." Mom blinked. "What?" "I'm not giving away my home." Her smile disappeared. "Don't embarrass this family." "I'm not." "You are. You've always had more than enough." I quietly shook my head. I worked for everything I have. Mom stepped closer. So did we. No, you worked for yours. I worked for mine. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Ryan quietly stepped toward Sophia. This wasn't my idea. She nodded nervously. I know. Mom suddenly grabbed my wrist. Stop being difficult. I gently pulled away. No. Without warning, her hand struck my face. The impact spun my head sideways. One pearl earring flew across the ballroom floor. Several guests gasped. Someone dropped a champagne glass. The music stopped. Complete silence. I slowly reached down, picked up the earring, placed it inside my clutch, then looked directly at my mother. I hope it was worth it. Without another word, I walked through the ballroom, past 200 silent guests, out the front doors, into the evening air. I sat inside my car for several minutes, then made one phone call. My name is Victoria Hayes. I need to speak with my attorney. Within minutes, he answered. I've changed my mind. About what? The spare keys. I want every lock replaced immediately. And I need the property manager to collect every remaining copy. No exceptions. He didn't ask questions. I'll take care of it. I thanked him, hung up, and drove away. Back at the reception, the celebration slowly resumed, though no one was really celebrating anymore. About an hour later, a man in a dark suit, carrying a leather briefcase, walked quietly into the ballroom. He approached the reception desk, then asked, I'm looking for Mr. and Mrs. Hayes. The coordinator pointed toward my parents. The man nodded and began walking in their direction. Sometimes, people don't realize the difference between asking for generosity and demanding ownership. As the unfamiliar man carrying a leather briefcase quietly approached my parents during the reception, the celebration they had fought so hard to control was about to become the conversation no one in that ballroom would ever forget. The man in the dark suit stopped beside my parents' table. He carried a leather briefcase, spoke quietly. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes? Dad looked up. Yes? My name is Daniel Foster. I'm here on behalf of Hayes Property Management. Mom frowned. What? I've been asked to deliver legal documents concerning Ms. Victoria Hayes' residence. The ballroom fell silent again. Dad looked confused. Legal documents? Yes? Daniel calmly opened his briefcase, removed a sealed envelope, then placed it on the table. I was instructed to personally collect every spare key belonging to Ms. Hayes' penthouse. Mom immediately stepped backward. What? The property owner has requested that every duplicate key be returned immediately. She laughed nervously. That's ridiculous. Daniel smiled politely. Actually, it's standard procedure whenever a property owner believes unauthorized access may be possible. Every guest watched. No one spoke. Dad slowly looked at my mother. You still have another key. She hesitated, then quietly answered, I had one made. The room froze. Dad stared at her. You copied Victoria's key? Mom quickly defended herself. It was only for emergencies. Daniel calmly replied, according to our records, the owner never authorized additional copies. Mom's face turned pale. I was her mother. He nodded. I understand. But the property belongs solely to Ms. Victoria Hayes. Ryan suddenly stood. I'm sorry. Did everyone expect Victoria to give away her home today? Nobody answered. He looked toward Sophia. You knew about this? Sophia immediately shook her head. No. I swear. I thought Mom was joking when she mentioned it. Ryan looked devastated. You let her invite 200 people to watch her pressure your sister. Sophia started crying. I didn't think she'd actually do it. Dad slowly lowered his head. I should have stopped this weeks ago. Daniel handed him a receipt. If you could please return every key. Dad looked at Mom. She slowly reached into her purse. Then another pocket. Finally, she removed 2 key cards and a metal key. Daniel counted them carefully. Thank you. He placed them into a security envelope, then quietly added, the building's locks are already being reprogrammed. Any previous keys will no longer work after midnight. Mom whispered. She changed everything. Daniel nodded. Immediately after speaking with her attorney, without another word, he closed his briefcase. Good evening. Then he walked away. The ballroom remained silent. Mom looked around. For the first time in years, nobody defended her. Not even Dad. Not even Sophia. Not one person. Ryan slowly removed the microphone from the stand. He looked directly at everyone. I owe Victoria an apology. This reception was supposed to celebrate our marriage. Instead, someone tried to take advantage of my sister-in-law. He turned toward Sophia. I love you, but I never wanted a home that belonged to someone else. Sophia burst into tears. I didn't either. She immediately grabbed her phone, called me. I watched it ring. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Instead, I answered. She was crying too hard to speak. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry. I truly didn't know Mom planned to do that. I believed her. not because she was crying, because Ryan had looked just as shocked. I know, I should have stopped her sooner. You aren't responsible for Mom's choices. No, but I'm responsible for staying silent. I smiled sadly. We all are sometimes. She quietly asked, will you ever forgive me? I already have, but forgiveness doesn't mean pretending today never happened. She softly answered, I understand. The next morning, Dad came to my penthouse alone. He looked exhausted. He stood at my door, holding a small velvet pouch. I found this. Inside was my pearl earring. One of the hotel staff had found it after the reception. He smiled sadly. I thought you should have it. I thanked him, then invited him inside. He looked around my home. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, I've never actually seen your place before. No, you've never visited. He looked away. I kept assuming there'd always be another chance. I poured him a cup of coffee. He quietly asked, can you ever forgive your mother? I looked toward the city skyline. I don't know. I hope someday she learns the difference between asking for generosity and believing she's entitled to it. He nodded slowly. I failed both of my daughters. You taught one daughter to sacrifice, and the other to expect sacrifice. His voice broke. I see that now. For the first time, I saw genuine regret. Not excuses, not denial, just regret. Epilogue. It's been 3 years since Sophia's wedding. Ryan and Sophia bought a modest townhouse with their own savings. The first house they ever truly owned. Ryan later admitted, it meant more because we earned it. My penthouse is still my home. Every time I unlock the front door, I remember something Grandpa used to tell me. What you build through honesty deserves to be protected. Dad visits often now. Our relationship has become stronger than it ever was before. As for Mom, she spent a long time refusing to admit she was wrong. Eventually, she wrote me a letter, not explaining, not blaming, simply saying, I confused being your mother with believing I had a right to your life. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was finally the beginning of accountability. My thoughts. Looking back, the slap wasn't the moment I lost respect for my mother. That happened long before. The slap simply exposed it in front of everyone else. People sometimes mistake generosity for obligation. They believe that because you've worked hard, you're responsible for solving everyone else's problems. You're not. Helping family is a gift. Ownership is not something anyone is entitled to demand. And sometimes, the healthiest boundary you'll ever set is a simple one-word answer. No.